ইকুয়েশনটা বের হবে একেবারে টেনবে। আগের দিন হয়ে গেছে।
Okay, so let me then begin. So last time we began discussing the evolution of the universe as a whole, and we said that by appropriate coordinate transformation we can take the metric to be of this form. And here T is the preferred cosmic type, okay, which we said that for some reason we seem to have a preferred cosmic type in which the universe has certain nice properties like homogeneity and isotropy. X is the space coordinate. So far we have not imposed the condition of homogeneity and isotropy. Okay, we have we have done is that we have just dropped the cross term between dxi and dt, but that was done simply by using an appropriate coordinate transformation that changes xi to some function of xi and t. So today we are going to impose the condition for homogeneity. So both homogeneity and isotropy is a statement of certain isometries, and the isometry takes the following form. Okay, first of all, the time doesn't change because we talk about homogeneity and isotropy at a given value of the cosmic time. But x in general can change. Okay, so xi will be in general some function fi of x prime and t prime. Okay, and indeed last time we used the coordinate transformation of this kind to remove the cross term. Okay. But now we are asking, are there that under what condition there will be still some coordinate transformations of this kind, okay, which preserve the form of the metric, in fact which doesn't change the functions, which maps the functions to which preserves the form of the functions. So what we are going to do is to look for transformations which are infinitesimal. Okay, because yes.
So yesterday we used 3 of these equations to conditions to remove the 3 of diagonals.
Exactly. We use
Freedom is already used.
Which freedom? Yes. So the point is that freedom has already been used. Okay. But now there can still be additional transformations of this kind which do not change the form of the matrix. Right? So those will of course not be the whole set of functions, right? Those will be some very special functions. Okay, which will preserve this form. Okay, what we have done last time is to make a general coordinate change of this form. So this fi was a general function, and we said that by adjusting these fi's we could remove those cross terms. Okay, but it could still happen that we still have some fi's left which do not generate the cross term. Right? First of all, it shouldn't generate a cross term, and second, it should preserve this form.
In principle, these FIs are unique.
Which FIs?
We wanted to use this FIs, xi as a function of xi and ti, mu xi,
Yes.
so that we can remove the cross terms.
Exactly.
Are these FIs are unique?
Well, presumably they are not unique because what we are saying today, right, is that it is possible to still have, even after setting the off-diagonal terms to 0, it is still possible to have some fi transformations left which do not generate the off-diagonal terms back, right? Because these FIs that you are looking for now will have the property that it preserves the form of the metric.
So I have some gauge freedom left over. Is it that the statement or?
Exactly, that's right. That you have that even after setting the cross terms to 0, right? This will of course not happen in general, right? But for certain choices of f1 and f3, it may happen, and that's what we are looking for.
So in this transformation, you are demanding a particular kind of an isometry itself.
Yes, now you will demand. So far you have not demanded any isometry, right? So
So that was also isometric.
no, that was not an isometry. That is a general coordinate transformation.
Okay.
We use the general coordinate transformation to remove the cross term.
Now in this one, you are demanding an isometry.
Yeah. Now we will demand that this is isometry. Okay, because if we make a general transformation of this kind, it will regenerate back the cross terms, right?
Okay.
We don't want that.
Hmm.
Okay? Because after all, you have used this to set the cross terms to 0, right? So now if you make an arbitrary transformation of this kind, we'll get back the cross terms. So what you have to look for are special kind of transformations which do not generate the cross terms back.
And the number of f's would be the number of isometric transformations.
Number of independent f's that we can find will be the number of independent isometric transformations that we have.
Those are the symmetries of this.
Those will be the symmetries of the matrix.
So in principle, we will get a class of functions generating the same kind of a non-cross term matrix.
Yeah, well that's not enough. That's of course a necessary condition, but you also need that the functional forms of f1 and f3 should be unchanged. That's the meaning of isometry, right?
Yes, yes.
Isometry says the whole metric should have the same functional form, right? Which in particular means because the cross terms are 0, it should remain 0. Okay? But also that f1 and f3 shouldn't change its form.
So we are like talking about very restricted class of functions.
Exactly. Isometries are always very restricted class of transformations, and for a general metric there may not be any isometry at all. Right? But so what you have to do now is to impose conditions on f1 and f3 so that these isometries exist. Okay, a general metric has no isometry. So if you take a generic f1 and f3, right, then you will find that there is no solution to this equation.
So the isometries are generated by the killing vectors. So if my
Fi's will be contain the killing vectors, right? So these are finite isometries. Infinitesimal portion of these will be generated by killing vectors.
yes, yes, yes.
So in a sense, you can say that we have to solve for killing vector equation in this background, and in general there will be no solution if you take f1 and f3 arbitrarily. Right? Only for some special choices of f1 and f3 that you may get some killing vectors.
Killing vectors are related with infinitesimal, but is it possible there are some kind of a finite transformation which are not related to continuous?
That is true, but that's not what we are worried about, right? Because we are looking for homogeneity and isotropy, right? Both of which can be translated in the infinitesimal portion, right?
Yes, yes.
Because homogeneity
defining
means that any two points are related. So in particular, if two points are arbitrarily close, there should be a transformation that relates the two.
Yes.
Right? That's clearly an infinitesimal transformation. Similarly, isotropy, right, is the 2 points at equal distance from a third point should be related to each other. But again, by taking those 2 points to be close to each other, we can look for infinitesimal isometries. Okay. So we will be looking today for infinitesimal transformations which are killing vectors and which eventually we will be able to implement the condition for homogeneity and isotropy. Is this point clear? Okay, and we will be looking for transformations of this kind because you don't want to touch the cosmic time. Okay, because we already know that this is a preferred time, okay, and so you don't want to change that.
Sir, I have just one question. In the interpretation of this preferred time,
Yes.
how is this general covariance being respected?
No, it's the choice of preferred time, of course, is not general coordinate invariant, right? The theory is general coordinate invariant. Okay? But what you are saying is that somehow in cosmology, in the evolution of the universe, there is a specific time, specific choice of time coordinate, which has been inherited from somewhere, we don't know at this stage. Okay? There is a theory of that, but that's not what we are trying to explore now. Right? We will assume that there is some kind of preferred time, right, in which the metric looks simple. It's not that you cannot do your physics in any arbitrary coordinate system, right? General coordinate invariance tells us that any arbitrary coordinate system you can use to describe a given space-time. Just like Minkowski space-time, you can choose to describe an arbitrary complicated coordinate system, right? Except that all the symmetries of the Minkowski space-time will not be visible in that coordinate system. It is certainly there, right? As we discussed, isometry, okay, is coordinate independent, right? So if you write the Minkowski space-time in a very complicated coordinate system, all the isometries, which are the Lorentz group and the Poincare group, will be there, but the coordinate transformations will not be manifest. What kind of transformations you should use to get the isometry? Right? So preferred time only means that there is a preferred kind of coordinate system in which the transformation law will look simple. Right? In particular, these transformations that we are looking for, okay, because its homogeneity at a given time, okay, it shouldn't change the time. Okay? The homogeneity requires that two different points look the same, right? But at the same time. Okay? So already you have made a choice of time. Okay? So now what we look for is the transformation that takes one point to another point at the same time. Right? That's why we don't want to change t. Is this clear? Okay. But once you have gotten the metric, you are free to write it in any other coordinate system, right? The physics is not going to change. Okay, the transformation laws will look very complicated. Okay, so this is finite. Now we look for infinitesimal version of this. So this will be t equal to t prime and xi equal to xi plus epsilon xi x prime of t. So the idea is that we will have to rewrite this metric in this new coordinate system, okay, and then demand that it looks the same as the old coordinate system. Right? The functional forms will look the same. So let's do this, then it will become a bit clearer. So the metric in the new coordinate system is minus f1 x plus epsilon xi prime x, sorry, this is x prime, okay, because I am writing x in terms of x prime. So this is x prime plus epsilon xi prime. dt is the same as dt prime square plus f3 I x prime plus epsilon zeta prime dxi. Okay, so what you are doing is that normally you are used to thinking, you wrote down the transformation of the metric, right? G prime ij, right? You wrote it down as gij. Okay? But this is another way of getting arriving at the same transformation law, namely that you know that this quantity should remain unchanged, the path length. Right? So all you have to do is that you just rewrite t and x in terms of t prime and x prime, okay, and collect the coefficients of dt prime square, dt prime dxi prime, and dx prime I dx prime. Right? That will give the transform value. It's exactly the same transformation law. Okay, if this looks unfamiliar, use the usual transformation of the metric that you have written down in components, okay, and substitute this. Okay, it will eventually give the same result. So dxi will be dx prime I plus del k xi I epsilon del k xi I dx prime k times dx prime j plus epsilon del l xi j dx prime j. Clear? Okay. So now we expand it out and keep terms to order epsilon. So this will give you minus f1 x prime plus epsilon psi k del k prime f1 x prime dt square dt prime square. Yeah. The first term. Okay? This term
F1 t prime, F1 x prime. Oh,
yeah, f1 because I have written x as x prime plus epsilon xi, right? So I am doing Taylor series expansion of this.
t will remain the same.
T has changed to t prime, right? But t and t prime are the same, right? So I don't have to change anything here. Okay, so here I have to Taylor series expand, right? Okay, so the leading term will be when you pick x prime, dx prime I, dx prime j, right? So let's write that down. Plus f3 ij of x prime dx prime I dx prime j. Okay, I just pick the leading term in the Taylor series expansion here and the leading term here and leading term here. Then I pick the epsilon term from here by Taylor series expanding and the leading term from here. So plus epsilon zeta m x prime del prime m f3 x prime dx prime I dx prime j. Then I pick the leading term from here. Then epsilon term from here. So let me write an epsilon here. So del k. Actually, these are all primes. Del prime k zeta I dx prime k dx prime k. Sorry, dx prime j. And then we have f3 ij of x prime. Now I pick the dx prime from here and this term from here. So dx prime I del prime l zeta j dx prime I. Is this clear what you are doing? Okay. So the idea is that now if you want to calculate, for example, the transform coefficient of dt prime square, g naught naught prime, just pick up the coefficient of dt prime square, that's f1 of x prime. These are all functions of p prime. These are all functions of p prime. Because so far we have not said anything about the t prime dependence. Okay, so the idea is that now to calculate g prime naught naught, you just have to pick up the coefficient of dt prime square, which is f1. If you want to pick up the coefficient of g prime naught I, g prime ti, you have to pick up the coefficient of dxi dt. Okay, which will be where? Which will be
dxi dt will not be there.
dxi dt no.
It's a cross term.
dxi dt should have been there somewhere.
Oh,
Yeah,
there will be.
I should have, I forgot something. See here,
So del prime k, there will be a dx prime k. So del prime k f1 x prime dt prime.
no, this is just dt prime square.
No, that's okay. Oh.
Yeah.
No,
Oh.
that is fine.
So I have forgotten something here because here when you get the Taylor series expansion, okay, this xi of course is a function of t also, right?
Okay, okay. So it will be del
So-
mu dx mu mu.
You should
kind
also
of-
add plus
plus or minus.
no, I think
This contracted index.
yeah, because dxi I am trying to calculate, right? Dxi is dx prime I plus epsilon d of this, right?
Hmm.
Now d of this will get contribution both from dx prime and dt prime.
Yes.
Okay, so there are these terms here. So here also plus epsilon del t prime of I j dt prime. Okay, so two more terms have to add now to whatever I have done. Okay, so plus epsilon f3 I j here del t prime psi I dt prime and dx prime j. one term plus epsilon ij. Now we pick the dx prime I from there, dx prime I, and from here I put del prime L is ij dx prime L. Sorry, no. Del prime P is actually the last term.
dt.
Are it both the same?
Pardon? Yes, so both will be the same. Eventually we can make a factor of 2.
It's contracting.
Okay, just like these two are also the same.
Yes. It's just like contracting integers.
Yeah. Because F3 is symmetric. So is this clear? Okay. So now the idea is, suppose you want to calculate the coefficient of dt prime dxi prime. Okay. You basically have to pick up the coefficient of dt prime dx prime. That will give you the ti component of g prime. Is this clear? Okay. So this will give the ti component of g prime. Okay. But if we want this to be an isometry, we want this to have exactly the same form as the original matrix. Right? So this is just general coordinate transfer. So now I write the condition for isometry. So isometry will require that ds square is minus f1 of x prime p prime dt prime square plus f3 ij x prime p prime dx prime I dx prime j. Is this okay? So now we see that this term, of course, is there, the first term, leading term, minus f1 dt prime square. So this we can cancel. And this term is also there, leading term, f3 ij dx prime I dx prime j. So this cancels this. Okay, look. Remember that the arguments are also changed, right? The isometric tells us the functional forms will remain the same. All the arguments will change from x to x prime and t to t prime. So this means that the rest of the terms must vanish to first order and epsilon. Okay. So let's collect the rest of the terms properly. So first we collect the coefficient of dt prime square. Okay. So we get 0 equal to epsilon dt prime square. The corresponding coefficient is zeta psi k del k prime of x prime. F1.
So it is independent of t. Independent of
X prime. Yeah.
So only a function
Plus,
of t.
now next we collect the dx j dt part on.
Individually all coefficient must be the same.
No, not these two individually.
No, I mean dt square dxi dxj.
Yeah. So first we are collecting all the coefficients, right? So dt prime dx prime j. Okay. Now this term is the same as this, just by ij exchange. Okay. So this we just multiply this by 2. So plus 2 epsilon dt prime dx prime j. Okay, and then the term is f3 ij of x prime d prime e dx prime j. So this is so del t prime is I. Clear? And then we connect the coefficient of the dxi dxj term, dx prime I dx prime j. So this has gone. So now let me write this as dx prime k dx prime l. Okay, and you have to change the indices there appropriately to match this over here. So first this term. Okay, so I have to change I and j to k and l because we are looking for dx prime k dx prime l. Okay. So del m prime f3 kl. Del m prime
zeta
f3 kl of x prime
zeta m.
Zeta.
zeta m. Plus we get this term. Okay. So we have to convert this to dxk dx prime l, right? So the j index have to convert to l index. Okay. So f3il del k prime zeta I psi I plus f3. Here you have to convert the I.
J to k.
No, not j to k because you want
I to k. Sorry.
I to k. So f3 kj. F3 kj del l prime
लास्ट लाइन में आ गया. लास्ट लाइन में आ गया 9.
Is this clear? So let's make sure that we have got everything. So dt prime square, this coefficient we have picked up. This coefficient we have picked up, that's the first term over here. This is there, and we picked up both of these. Okay. And these we are already picked in the part of dt prime dx prime. Yeah. So these are all taken. So you see that in general, okay, if we are not demanding isometry, if we just make an arbitrary coordinate transformation, we cannot preserve the condition that the coefficient of dt prime dx prime is 0, right? And that's what we expect because this coordinate transformation is what we use to fix the coefficient of dt prime dx prime to be 0, right? Now if you make another coordinate transformation of that kind, it will produce back dt prime dx prime. Okay, and that's what it is doing. Okay? Except in very special case that we are going to discuss now. So what is the condition? First let's look at this. dt prime square must vanish. So xi k times del k prime must vanish. Okay, xi k is an infinitesimal
Arbitrary.
vector. Not arbitrary. Xi k is not arbitrary, right? Because you are looking for filling vector.
Isometry. Yes.
Okay. But what do you want from xi k? Okay. We want that xi k, there should be enough number of xi k's which implement homogeneity and isotropy. Okay. Which means that starting from a given point, there should be infinitesimal deformations that can change it to any neighboring point. That's the condition for homogeneity. Right? That in a given point can be taken to any point, other point, right? In particular, other points which are infinitesimally close to a given point must all be reached. So there must be enough xi k's which can take you from one point to another point nearby, right? which means that as a vector space, in the vector space there should be at least 3 linearly independent sides. Right? Because starting from a given point, right? If you want to go, this is 3-dimensional space, right? X spans a 3-dimensional space. If you want to go any arbitrary direction, any arbitrary nearby point, there should be at least 3 independent x's, okay, which satisfy this.
So Zk should span the same spatial space.
Yeah, so the xk as a small vectors must span the 3-dimensional vector space, right? Nearby. So which means that del k prime of f1 must be 0 for every k.
First, this equation comes from the demanding isometry, the transmission isometry.
Yes, demanding isometry.
The second one is what?
Yeah, now we are saying that when you are demanding that a space is homogeneous, okay, there should be certain number of isometries, okay, at least enough so that given any point you can reach another point by the isometric transformation. Okay. So how does it translate to infinitesimal isometries? Okay. For infinitesimal isometries, it says that if starting from here, okay, you have to reach any of these neighboring points, okay, there should be at least the x's must span as a vector all directions around this point. 3 directions, right? 3 linearly independent vectors. Okay. So now, if we have a dot b equal to 0 for 3 linearly independent a's, then b has to vanish. Right? That's what we are using here, right? Around any given point, because you can go in arbitrary direction, okay, any nearby point, there should be at least 3 x's, linearly independent x's, which are isometries. Okay, and using those linearly independent x's, you can conclude the del k prime of f1 must be 0. It's not enough to have one isometry. Right? One isometry will take you in one direction, right? It only tells us that the gradient of f in that direction must vanish. Okay? But homogeneity requires more than one isometry. Okay? Homogeneity requires at least 3, which implements the homogeneity condition, right? From any point you should be able to go to any neighboring point. And then on top of that you have to implement isotropy condition, okay, which I have not even talked about yet. So you conclude, so this implies b equal to 0, okay, for, if this is true, if it is true for 3 linearly independent a. So essentially the conclusion then is that del k prime of f1 x prime p prime should be 0, okay, or equivalently we can write this as just f1 of t prime. f1 should be a function of t prime only. Is this clear? This vanishing of this, so this gave a condition on the metric. This one now is going to give a condition on xi. Okay. Why? Because we know that f3, see, recall the original metric, okay, before we made this transformation. Original metric had a dt square coefficient and the dxi dxi coefficient was f3ij. Now the metric must have non-vanishing determinant, right? Metric has to be invertible. Okay. So which basically means that the f3ij must be an invertible matrix because it's diagonal, right? There is a minus f1 in the 0 0 block and then f3ij, no cross terms. Okay. So it better be that f3 is an invertible matrix. Okay. If f3 is an invertible matrix, then vanishing of this requires the del t prime of xi should be 0. So this comes from dt prime square coefficient, dt prime dx prime j coefficient implies that del t prime of should be 0. Namely, the isometries that you are looking for should not depend on t prime, should not depend on prime. Okay, if you look for isometries of that kind, you basically regenerate back the dt dx time, which you don't want.
Isn't that something we are expecting, because we are expecting that the homogeneity is in the space direction? So my killing vector should generate, should pan the space direction, not the time direction also.
No, that of course we have implemented, because xi you have taken only along the I direction, right?
Yes.
We are taking time translation.
Yes.
Time you are not changing, right?
But if it is dependent on time,
Yes,
then
it could happen that at different times the transformation will differ.
Hmm.
Right? That could happen. Okay, but what this is saying is that if you try to do that,
That
any
will-
transformation of that kind
that
will
will-
start mixing the d and x. Now, of course, you can go to another coordinate system when the dt dx term is not 0.
Hmm.
Okay, in which case these conditions will change. Okay. But if you are insisting on starting from a metric where the dt dx term is 0, okay, then any isometry of that metric okay, should have the property that the xi can depend only on space coordinates and not the time coordinate.
So,
Yes.
beginning with we had 3 xi. And
At least 3 xis. At least 3 to implement homogeneity.
yes,
Right?
at
To
least,
implement isotropy, you need more.
at least 3 xis to
Yes.
implement homogeneity. And there also we saw that the 3 were independent.
Yes, as vectors they are linear. There has to be at least 3 linearly independent vectors.
Yes, sir. But then again, size cannot be arbitrary.
No, xis are of course not arbitrary. Xis are very special because they implement the homogeneity condition, right?
Yes, sir.
They are isometries, right? Given a metric, the number of isometries is limited.
But then again, we are having that they will have at least 3 independent.
Yes, yes. So exactly. So the point is, isometries are rare. A generic metric has no isometry.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But what you are demanding that if you want our metric to be homogeneous, then it has to have at least 3 independent isometries,
Okay.
which implement the homogeneity condition, right? So only very special metrics will have that property, right? Not every metric is going to have that property. Okay, so what you are looking for here is special metrics which have this property, but for special metrics, of course, that xi is not arbitrary, right? It's very special transformations are isometrics for a given metric. So you are trying to find a condition on both, right? Both condition on what kind of xis we can have and what kind of metrics we can have. Okay, so that the universe is homogeneous and isotropic.
So they,
Dependent functions, right, which will satisfy all the equations. Okay, but as I said, there should be more because you also have to implement isotropy, right? The homogeneity itself will demand that at least there should be at least 3 independent functions which implement this. Okay, now the last one. So last one I will not do very much. I will write it again here. Because I am del n prime f L plus f3 I n plus f3 aj okay, because dx prime coefficient should it should be changed. And because x prime is a dummy variable, I could also replace x prime by x here. That's x prime is the argument. It has to hold for all x prime.
Isn't here
Yes.
the last two terms are identical?
Well, they are identical if you multiply by this, symmetry is in K and L.
Yes.
But when I write it this way, it's not identical.
Yes, but
Because when you multiply by this, then of course you are automatically symmetrizing in x and L, right?
Yes.
Then you don't have to write the last term separately, but when you write an equation without this, you have to explicitly implement the symmetrization. It's like if you have a mu nu, a ij, dxi dxj equal to 0. Okay. What does it mean for a? Is aij 0? No, aij is not 0. It means aij is antisymmetric, right? So the equivalent components is aij plus agi equal to 0. So this we don't worry because F3 is automatically symmetric. Okay, so first term we don't have to write F3K plus F3LK, that's the same as F3K. But these two terms are not manifestly symmetric under KNX.
This is just telling that this two in this antisymmetric in these two indices.
Some of the two.
Some of
Some of the two is symmetric in these two indices.
Maybe antisymmetric.
Well, in this case, some of the two happens to be symmetric. Okay, that's why when I write this way, right, I don't have to also add K going to KL exchange because these under KL exchange these are these just get exchanged. Okay, so this whole quantity is manifestly symmetric under KL exchange. Okay, but now the point that we want to note is that this condition. Remember, we had written down the condition for a vector xi being a killing vector. Okay, we did it in 4th space-time dimension, but of course it's valid in all space-time dimensions. The condition for some vector field being a killing vector. Now, what we can see is from here is that if we think of F3ij dxi dxj as a 3-dimensional space, forget about the time altogether. Think of F3ij dxi dxj. It's of course a function of x and t as a 3-dimensional metric, 3D metric. Suppose t, you just think of as a parameter which levels are metric. Okay? Then this equation is precisely the condition that the vector field xi m, which is now a 3-dimensional vector, xi has only 3 components, that the vector field xi m is a killing vector of this metric.
Yes.
Is this clear? Right? Basically the 0 component has gone away completely. Right? So what it means is that the condition for homogeneity and isotropy that we started with in this coordinate system translates to the statement, to the requirement that F3 regarded as a 3-dimensional metric must be homogeneous and isotropic. Yeah, there should be sufficient number of xi's, okay, to implement homogeneity, means that there should be sufficient number of vector field xi which takes you from any point x, now vector x, to any other point vector y or x, and it should also be isotropic in the sense that we described earlier. Okay, that take 3 points, x0, x1 and x2. Okay. If x1 and x2 are equal distance from x0, okay, equal geodesic distance, then there has to be a transformation, isometry, which keeps x0 fixed and takes x1 to x2. That was the condition for isometry, isotropy. Okay. So all of those statements are now can be thought of as a statement on this 3-dimensional metric. Is this clear? So xi m is an isometry of F3ij dxi dxj, okay, without any reference to the 4-dimensional space.
This is the killing vector equation in 3-dimensional equation.
Yes, this is the killing vector equation in 3-dimensional for 3-dimensional metric. Right? So this statement is the same statement as that xi m is a killing vector of this 3-dimensional metric. Okay? And it should be, there should be sufficient number of xi m so that this 3-dimensional space is homogeneous and isotropic. Okay? So the statement now is translated into a statement on this 3-dimensional metric, okay, at any given time. Okay, fix t, think of t as a parameter. Okay. So F3ij of x and t for any fixed t has to have this property. It should be homogeneous and isotropic. Is this clear? Okay, and we'll later on we'll find out what kind of F3 we need for that. Okay, so let me now state the conclusion of all this. So what we conclude is that the 4-dimensional metric A square is given by minus f1 of t dt square plus f3ij of x and t dxi dxj. Okay. And that for every t f3ij of xt is a homogeneous and isotropic trigonometric. Because we have decoupled the problem into two parts. First, on F1 the condition is very simple, it is simply independent of x. On F3 the condition can be stated independently of what F1 is. Okay. Namely, the F3 as a 3-dimensional metric must describe homogeneous and isotropic metric in 3 dimensions.
When you have started these arguments, we have first assumed that there will be a class of transformation which have deleted this xt cross term will not be a single function, but there will be a isometries which will do the same trick, right?
Yes, exactly.
But as you have argued at the beginning that that may not be case in the many case of matrices.
Yes.
There are kind of special kind of matrix
Which could have that.
which could have correct. As we know that we are expecting this 3D to be homogeneous and isotropic, that's why we are expecting that there must be some isotropies left over, which is even deleting the cross terms can have isometries.
Yeah, the point is we are expecting means what? Is we are trying to implement it, right? From experiment we know that our universe is homogeneous and isotropic, right? At a given time slice. So the metric that we should look for to describe our universe must have this property. Now there may not be any metric with that property, right? That in that case our initial assumption would have been wrong. Okay. So what you are saying is that let's go ahead and see whether we can find any metric which is consistent with the initial assumption. Right? And so far we have arrived at this conclusion that by choosing appropriate coordinate system, right? This is very important. That this statement is not valid in arbitrary coordinate system, because given the metric like this, you can always change your coordinate system to have the cross term. Okay, but we made our life convenient by saying that we will work in a very specific coordinate system in which the cross terms are eliminated. Okay? T is the cosmic time, okay? And in that coordinate system, we will look for very special kind of isometries. The isometries which do not change T, because T is the cosmic time. We don't want to change that. Okay? Which changes x to x prime, okay, which is a function of x and t. Okay. And now you are asking, is it possible that we can choose some metric, okay, where there are isometries satisfying the desired properties. Okay. And what we arrived at by requiring that is this. Okay. That if we want to implement this, the metric must satisfy this property that the dt square coefficient is independent of x, okay, and that the 3-dimensional metric F3, the F3 should have the property that regarded as a 3-dimensional metric is homogeneous and isotropic. Okay, so these are very special metrics, right, which we derive by requiring the desired properties of the universe, okay, namely homogeneous and isotropic. Certainly a generic metric will not have this property.
So, just one question that when we derive this form of metric, can we assume that it is true or it was true for all t?
Well, you are assuming that this is true for all t, at least locally it's true, right? whether it was true very early in the universe or whether it will be true very far in the future, we of course don't know from this. Right? For that you have to know what kind of equations there's going to be evolution of this metric.
Is any evolution that we do, we will use this metric?
Well, the point is, see, evolution requires also the energy momentum tensor, right?
Yes,
So you have to figure out what the energy momentum tensor is, okay? And then see, maybe, I mean, once you put everything together, we will find that the universe will not remain like this forever, right? So that's something that you have to see. Right now, we are saying the metric looks like this. Later on, you have to see what it implies for the energy momentum tensor, and then evolve the system both forward and backward using Einstein's equation. Okay. Now we are going to make one more simplification, which is that now that it has become that coefficient of Bt square has become a function of time only, we can exploit the coordinate transforms involving the time that we hadn't explored so far. Namely, we can take t to be some psi of t prime, right? Look for a coordinate transformation of this kind, which doesn't do anything else to anything to x. So minus f1 of t dt square will become minus f1 of t psi prime of t prime dt prime square.
F of
Psi prime,
F of also.
Pardon?
F of psi.
F1 of psi prime t,
Yeah, so t is psi prime t.
psi t prime.
Yeah, so I have just written t as it is, but t will be psi t prime, yes. And the idea is that we want to choose this combination to be 1. Okay? This psi is completely up to us, right? Okay, and so you demand that this is true. So what does it mean more specifically? So psi t is psi t prime, right? So this is basically dt d prime, dt prime. Psi prime of t prime is dt dt prime. You are demanding that this is 1 over square root of f1 of t. So dt prime is square root of f1 of t dt. Yeah, which is a well-defined object because f1 has to be positive, right, to preserve the signature. So t prime is integral from t naught to t square root of f1 of u. This is the coordinate transformation we need to make. Okay, if we define t prime as a function of t in this way, then we are guaranteed that dt prime, so you can work backwards from that. If t prime is this, the dt prime is square root of f1 t dt. So when you square it, dt prime square is f1 of t dt square. Okay, so this quantity now becomes minus dt prime square. Okay, so this becomes minus dt prime square.
Then put t prime is equal to t.
Pardon?
Then put t prime is equal
Yeah,
to t.
then I can just re-label t prime as t. So what this is saying is that this f1 you can forget. Okay, by appropriate parameters of time, we can just take this to minus dt square. So let me write that. question. Is this step clear? Right? I just said that by parameterizing T, I just make the first coefficient 1. So now the problem reduces to finding homogeneous and isotropic F3. Okay, because any homogeneous and isotropic F3 will not satisfy our conditions. Okay. Conversely, if we want to satisfy the condition that universe is homogeneous and isotropic in the sense I described, okay, then we must choose an F3 which is homogeneous and isotropic. Okay, 3-dimensional space which is homogeneous and isotropic. Okay. And it turns out that all such 3-dimensional spaces are completely classified. There are only 3 possible choices. Okay, and I will not describe what those 3 possible choices are. Okay. I will not prove that those are the only ones. Okay, but we will see that at least those 3 are homogeneous and isotropic. Okay, in the sense that I have described.
If we impose the isotropic condition, F3 will have those forms.
Yes, exactly. Or if we impose a homogeneity and isotropic condition, then F3 will have those forms.
So you are saying that only those 3 are the possible.
Yes, that's right. So the 3 that I am going to describe now are the only 3 which are homogeneous and isotropic.
That is the mathematical proven.
Yeah, this can be proven mathematically. That those are the only 3 spaces. So the first is trivial, which is flat space. Dx square plus dy square plus dz square. Right? This is clearly homogeneous and isotropic 3-dimensional space. Is that clear? It's homogeneous because you can translate, right? Translation, just x goes to x plus a, right? Y goes to y plus b, z goes to z plus c, implements homogeneity. It can take you from any point to any other point. Isotropy around a given point is just rotation. Take the origin, okay, and just rotation around the origin, which is described by 3 by 3 orthogonal matrix, that implements isotropy. Right? Take the origin, take any 2 points and equal distance from the origin. Right? Here equal distance means of course just equal distance in coordinates. Right? Metric is flat. We know that 2 vectors which have the same length can always be rotated to each other using a 3-dimensional rotation. Okay? So that implements isotropy. So this is clearly homogeneous and isotropic. Now, I will write this also in spherical polar coordinates. Okay, now, of course, in this coordinate system, the homogeneity and isotropy are not very easy to see. Right? Translation symmetry, for example, is not visible. Right? If you didn't know the transformation between spherical polar and Cartesian, and somebody gave you this metric, we wouldn't know that it's translation invariant. Right? Similarly, the full rotational invariance is also not manifest when you look at this metric. Right? Rotation in the in the phi direction, phi goes to phi plus alpha, of course, is clear, but other rotations are not obvious. But nevertheless, it's the same metric. The second example is 3-dimensional sphere. Okay, so this is just a generalization of a 2-dimensional spherical surface that you are familiar with. So take 4 coordinates and impose a condition . This is what we mean by a 3-dimensional sphere. Okay. This space is 3-dimensional because we have put one condition on 4 coordinates. Okay. Now, of course, this doesn't describe the metric. We have to also specify what the metric is. Okay. So, essentially, the idea is that the metric will write as a flat Euclidean metric.
And put the condition also.
And you can write this as a three-dimensional matrix by simply eliminating one of the variables in terms of the others. Okay, if you write W equal to square root of a square minus x square minus y square minus z square, you get a three-dimensional matrix. So why is this homogeneous and isotropic? Okay, so pardon?
Your surface is homogeneous.
Yeah, I mean that's what we normally are familiar with, right? But let's just make sure that we are not missing anything from this intuition. Okay. So homogeneity means that given any 2 points, we should be able to find a transformation that takes you from one point to the other. Okay. So what is the meaning of given any 2 points? Okay. Given any 2 points, like 2 points x, y, z, w and x prime, y prime, z prime, w prime, each of which satisfies this. Okay. Means that in 4-dimensional language, it's 2 vectors of equal length. Right? X, y, z, w and x prime, y prime, z prime, w prime, both have to satisfy that they are equal to s square. Now we know that any 2 vectors, any 2 4-dimensional vectors, in fact this is true in general in n dimension, any 2 n-dimensional vectors which have the equal length. Yes.
First of all, this space is embedded in 4-dimensional R4.
Yes.
R4 is inherently homogeneous, right?
Yes.
So if I take a surface out of that, that space must be homogeneous.
So take an ellipsoid in R4. That's not homogeneous, right? But take 3-dimensional space R3 and take an arbitrary complicated surface. That's certainly not a homogeneous surface. So embedding space being homogeneous doesn't mean that the surface is homogeneous. Right? You have to do more work. But in this case, what I was saying is that given 2 points, 2 points on this manifold, okay, in the 4-dimensional Euclidean space are 2 vectors of equal length. Okay. And so orthogonal transformation, given 2 vectors, 2 4-dimensional vectors of equal length, there is always an orthogonal transformation, okay, SO4, a 4x4 orthogonal matrix which can take you from one to the other. And such an orthogonal transformation will not change the metric. Then it's clear, the form of the metric is such that the orthogonal transformation is not going to change this. Is this point clear? Okay. So x, y, z, w goes to some r, let me call it R4, 4 by 4 orthogonal matrix. Okay. So which means that dx, dy, dz, dw, this is a rigid rotation, should also go to the same matrix times dx, dy, dz, dw. So which basically means that if you make this coordinate transformation, then the form of the metric doesn't change, so it's an isometric, and it can take you from any point to any other point. Is this clear? So it's homogeneous. Now you have to check that it's isotropic. Now once you have proved that it's homogeneous, it's enough to check that it's isotropic around any one point.
So that we have
Origin.
Pardon?
that we have shown by this equal length from any point.
No, but that length was measured from the origin. Origin was not part of the
It's a
sphere at all, right?
Oh.
Now you have to make sure that given a point on the sphere
Okay.
and 2 other points at equal length, they can be transformed to each other, right? Keeping that point fixed. Is this okay? So it's not, we have not so far tested isotropy. That argument that I gave showed homogeneity. Given any 2 points, we can relate. Okay? Isotropy requires a little more, right? It has to fix one point and relate to other points. But what I was saying is that once you have proven homogeneity, it is enough to prove isotropy around any one point. Okay? So metric is isotropic around one point, it will be isotropic around any other point because it's homogeneous. So isotropy, we check around say 0, 0, 0, 8. These are x naught. This certainly satisfies this equation.
So x, y, z, w is the coordinate of the embedding space.
Or the embedding space, yes. Okay. So x naught, you have to think of a 3-dimensional vector. Okay, because there is a, I mean, even though I have written it as a 4-dimensional vector, but it lies on this 3-dimensional space, right?
Yeah.
Because it satisfies this equation.
If I try to introduce some angular coordinates and write it in angular coordinate form, isn't that there will be more visible of this isotropy?
Well, depends on what angular coordinate you use. Normally symmetries are less visible in angular coordinates. Right?
But
Just we
like-
saw in sphere, for example, right? Two-dimensional sphere, right, has most of the symmetry is invisible.
But phi symmetry is isotropic.
Yeah, so phi symmetry is there, so you have to choose angular coordinates appropriately. Right? But it's easier in fact in this language, right? So take this point over here and you want to pick two other points at equal distance. Okay? So x1 and x2. x1 will be, say, let's call it x, y, z, w, and x2 will be x tilde, y tilde, z tilde, w tilde. Okay, each satisfies this condition. Now it's easy to see, maybe like it requires little work but not too much. That if we want these 2 points to be at equal distance from here,
X square plus y square plus z square should be same.
yeah, so these two should be the same. Okay, because on the sphere, so it's like you are sitting at the north pole, right, and you are going to equal distance. Okay. So what you have to show is that we need that x square plus y square plus z square should be equal to x tilde square plus y tilde square plus z tilde square w, and this also implies of course w is equal to w tilde, because w is given by the square root of this. Okay, these are given an exercise.
So what is this?
Yeah, so these are the 2 coordinates x1 and x2. You want both of these to be equal distance from this. Okay, but this distance has to be measured on the sphere, right? Not Euclidean distance. Okay, but in this case, you can argue that at least if the points are close by, then equal Euclidean distance implies equal distance on the sphere, right? That you can see also physically. Take a 2-dimensional sphere, right? Suppose you are at North Pole.
That's the way we have defined the metric also. Right?
No, the
Where
metric
different-
is here, but the point is,
Making it of
if you take the surface of a sphere, right? The distance between this point and this point on the sphere, you have to go along this.
Yes, yes.
Okay, this distance, this Euclidean distance is just this chord, right? This is not the distance that you are looking for. What we want is a equal
Okay.
distance measured on the surface.
But
Right?
we have written the small distance ds square to be the Euclidean metric itself and then put it the condition, right?
Yes, that's why you do it on the sphere also, right? The
Yes.
sphere metric is obtained by writing the Euclidean metric dx square plus dy square plus dz square.
So we have already assumed that the Euclidean distance at the very small scale is equal to the distance of this.
Yes, at a very small scale, right?
Yes.
But what I'm saying, it doesn't require that scale
No,
has
it's
to be
not.
infinitesimal. Okay, that what you can show is that even if the scale, I mean, this is finite but not too far away, right? So not beyond the equator. Then if we want that Euclidean distance measured along the sphere is the same, okay, then basically the Euclidean distance have to be the same, right? You can see on the sphere, okay, 2-dimensional sphere, what are the points at equal Euclidean distance from the North Pole? That's this circle, right? Okay, you go on
Okay.
this or go along this curve or go along this curve is the same. Okay, but that now if you think in the embedding space, that also means that they are at equal distance measured in the embedding space. If we just use this metric without worrying about the fact that you have to go along the sphere. Okay, so even though this is not always valid, right? For example, when you go far away, it may not be valid, okay? But at least nearby. Okay, and isotropy really imposes the condition for nearby points. Okay, it says that given a point x0 and 2 other points x1, x2 near it, okay, not infinitesimally close necessarily, but near it, there should be a transformation that relates the two. Okay. So for that, it's enough to guarantee that the Euclidean distance in the embedding spaces are the same. Okay. And then it's absolutely clear that if you want the Euclidean distances to be the same, okay, between this and this, and this and this, and each of these satisfies this condition, okay, then this has to hold. Okay, because then w minus a whole square will be w tilde minus a whole square by this, and then the rest of the term, these are all zeros, so x square plus y square plus z square equal to x tilde square plus y tilde square plus z tilde square. Is this point clear? So now to establish isotropy, we have to find a transformation that keeps the point x0 fixed and takes x1 to x2. So what will be such a transformation?
A rotation in three-dimensional space XYZ.
Yeah,
Not x1.
not in the fourth direction, right? Because if we make a rotation in the three-dimensional space, okay, which acts on x, y, z, that's also a four-dimensional rotation. Special case of four-dimensional rotation. That keeps the point 0, 0, 0, a fixed. Right? So what? Let me write in equations. So if you take x, y, z, w going to R, 1, these are all zeros, x, y, z, w. This is a 3 by 3 rotation, so this is 3D rotation matrix. Then this clearly leaves this point fixed. Right? 0, 0, 0, a, when this acts on it, it gives you back 0, 0, 0, a. What does it do to x, y, z, w? It gives w as itself and it rotates x, y, z. Right? R times x, y, z. Now, because w remains fixed, it's equal to w tilde because w and w tilde are the same. And now we again use the same result in one dimension, that if you have two vectors of equal length, there is always a rotation matrix which takes you from one to the other. Right? So you can always find an R that acts on x, y, z and gives you back x tilde, y tilde, z tilde. Is this clear? Okay. So the surface of a sphere, or not the surface, the volume of a three-dimensional sphere describes a homogeneous and isotropic three-dimensional space.
So this R4 written is in SO4.
Pardon?
This R4 written.
Yes, this is in SO4 exactly. Okay. But this is a special case of R4. This rotation is a special case of this. Right? This is a four-dimensional rotation matrix, but of course this is also a four-dimensional rotation matrix.
It's a 3 cross.
Yeah, so the general transformation is this. So to prove homogeneity and isotropic, we have to basically show there are special cases of this which implement homogeneity and which implements isotropy. And that's what we are doing here. Okay, now we want to find the metric. Okay, now of course one way to find the metric will be to eliminate W and write the metric in terms of x, y, z. Okay, but that's not very efficient, or that doesn't look very nice. So what we will do is to use the parameters. So W cos psi, or A cos psi, Z is A sin psi cos theta, X A sin psi sin theta cos phi, and Y is A sin psi sin theta sin phi. Okay, so instead of using 4 coordinates, I now have introduced 3 independent parameters, psi, theta and phi. Okay. And you can easily check that x square plus y square equals z square plus w square is equal to a square. Okay, basically that x square plus y square, you get rid of the cos, plus cos square plus sin square. Then when you add z square to it, you get rid of the second this term, and then finally when you add w square, you get rid of the psi also. Okay, so this is a parameterization of this three-dimensional space. It's little more non-trivial, but not hard to calculate the metric. So I'll give it as an exercise again. ds square, this three-dimensional, is a square times d psi square plus sine square psi. Okay, you basically have to calculate dx, dy, dz, dw from here, square them and add them. Okay, and this is what you should find. Sine square. Is this okay? Now we can write this a slightly different way by writing a new coordinate r equal to sine psi. Then ds3 square becomes a square and dr square over 1 minus r square plus r square d theta square plus sine square theta d phi square. Okay, so now written in this way, it looks similar to flat space in polar coordinates. Okay, except that here instead of having just dr square, you have dr square over 1 minus r square.
But here dr square, the small r has a limitation. It had to go to -1 to +1.
Yeah, when it cannot go beyond 1. Any questions? Okay, finally I'll write a third example, and that's the last one. Now again we start with the 4-dimensional space, but not 4-dimensional Euclidean space. Instead we take 4-dimensional Lorentzian space. ds square times dx square plus dy square plus dz square minus dw square. And the condition that he imposed is w square minus x square minus y square minus z square equals a square, and w is positive.
This is the third example.
This is the third example. Example 3. Now the non-trivial part here, you see this metric is not has indefinite signature, right? This is 1 minus sign, 3 other plus signs. Okay. A priori it's not obvious that once you restrict on this surface, it's in Euclidean space. That's what you want, right? Because you are in describing cosmology, you already have separated out the minus dt square part, right? The F3ij that you are looking for is purely Euclidean, right? So you have to make sure, if you are looking for manifolds, candidate F3, you better make sure that it's Euclidean space, right? Now that was guaranteed earlier, okay? Because you start with a positive definite metric, right? So obviously any surface that you take will have metric which is positive definite. Here it's not so clear, okay? But we will see that indeed it gives Euclidean metric, okay? When you restrict to this.
That is why the omega greater than 0 is
Yeah, well, no, omega greater than 0 is basically because this surface has two disconnected components. Omega larger than A and omega less than minus A. Omega cannot be in between A and minus A, right? So it's basically, if you don't impose this condition, then you have two disconnected spaces. You cannot go from one to the other, right? So that's why you don't.
This is the two disconnected hyperboloids.
Yeah, so this is like a hyperbola. In one less dimension, this will be like a hyperbola with two disconnected components. Okay, so let's check the isometries. Right? The isometries here are WA or x, let me write this, w x y z goes to lambda w x y z when lambda is a Lorentz transformation. Now I should just emphasize that these Lorentz transformations are nothing to do with the real space-time Lorentz transformation. Right? That's not. This W has nothing to do with the time coordinate that you are interested in. Okay? W will go ahead because you are imposing this condition. Okay? Nevertheless, it's a Lorentz transformation only in the sense that it satisfies the same condition as the Lorentz group element. Lambda eta lambda transpose equal to eta. Okay? And why is this an isometry? Because the metric is up to invariant under this transformation. So that is this condition. Right? Because this combination is invariant under Lorentz transformation.
Yes.
Is this clear? Now we can check for homogeneity. Okay, so these are the isometries. Okay, another question is are these isometries enough to establish that the system is homogeneous, the space is homogeneous? Okay, that given any 2 points in this space, is there a lambda which relates the two? That's the question. Okay. Now, what is the meaning of given any 2 points in the space? It means that we are given 2 time-like vectors of equal length, because the vector w x y z we have to satisfy this, right? Because this is positive, right? This is the time-like vector, right? The time component dominates over the space component. 2 such points will imply 2 time-like vectors, and they have the same length because both of them have to length a.
So they can be connected to
Okay. So is there a Lorentz transformation that connects 2 time-like vectors, 2 arbitrary time-like vectors?
because Lorentz transformation inherently change a vector keeping the this quantities identical, right?
Yes, that is true. But
And
we
a
are
time-like
asking the reverse question.
Yes.
Given any 2 time-like vectors, is there a Lorentz transformation that relates the 2?
Yes.
If their lengths are
Yes.
same.
Yeah, yes, their lengths are the same.
The answer is yes.
It's always true. Rotation plus boost can relate to 2 time-like vectors.
Is boost.
Rotation plus boost, yes. Well, it's almost true. Okay, but there is one more condition, that the time component has to have the same sign. 2 time-like vectors, one of which has time component positive, the other one has time
Yes,
component
yes,
negative,
yes.
cannot be related by Lorentz transform.
Yes, yes,
But here omega is greater than 0.
Yeah, here omega greater than 0 implements that. See, Lorentz transformation cannot change the reverse the direction of time.
yes, yes.
Right? The Lorentz transformation is a continuous transformation. So, but here that's not a problem because omega is positive, right? So we have 2 time-like vectors of the same length, but also both have positive time component. Okay, in that case you can find a Lorentz transform that relates that.
Sir, is it directly to Lagrangian isometry because it has a Lorentzian structure, the metric has a Lorentzian structure?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Observation it is true.
Yeah, by inspection, the metric has a Lorentzian structure and this equation also has Lorentzian structure. See, isometry of the metric doesn't necessarily imply that space is isometric unless the embedding equation also has a symmetry. It's like take a 3 Euclidean space, right? It has a SO3 isometry, right? But if you take an ellipsoid in the 3 Euclidean space, it's not doesn't have SO3 isometry. Okay? And the reason is that the equation for the ellipsoid is not invariant under an arbitrary rotation. Right? This x square plus y square plus 2z square equal to s square. That will be the equation of an ellipsoid, for example. And this is not invariant under arbitrary rotation of x, y, z. Okay? So you need, for isometry, you need both, that the embedding space should have the invariance, okay, and the equation that embeds the surface in the embedding space should also have the same symmetry.
So the constraint surface also must be invariant under this transformation?
Exactly, because this is a
Lorentzian d square kind of.
exactly. So under the Lorentz transformation, this quantity remains fixed, right? This is standard property of this is what in fact defines the Lorentz group, right? That it leaves a vector, the length of the vector unchanged, right? And the length is measured in this way. Is this clear? So let me repeat again. So given this space, right, like in the case of the sphere, what the isometries are easy to determine. Okay, by inspection. Earlier it was the 4-dimensional rotational symmetry. Here it's the 4-dimensional Lorentz transformation. Okay, but then you have to check that those isometries are enough to ensure that the manifold, the space that you are considering, is homogeneous and isotropic. Okay? For that, you have to find appropriate isometries which implement this homogeneous and isotropic. Okay? So here homogeneity is here, so isotropy, okay, is in fact also not hard. Because once we have shown that the space is homogeneous, it's enough to show isotropy around one point.
And you can fix omega.
So you can take x log as w equal to a,
0, 0.
x equal to 0, y equal to 0, z equal to 0. x1 will be w equal to w tilde x y z, sorry, that may be w x y z, and x2 will be w tilde x tilde y tilde z tilde. Okay. Again, one can check that equal distance, this distance d and this distance also being d, the equal distance implies that w is w tilde and x square plus y square plus z square should be x tilde square plus y tilde square plus z tilde square. Okay, this follows from equal distance. Equal distance from x1.
The rotation part of the group is doing the trick here.
Exactly. So now it's clear what isometry you have to pick. You have to check the 3-dimensional rotation, right? You take lambda.
This is
To be-
like the previous one.
Yeah.
So it's basically similar to what we had earlier. So you can take lambda to be 1 and R3 and pick R3 so that R3 acting on x, y, z gives you x tilde y tilde z. Because the isometry will be, so the isotropy will be implemented by the rotation element in this case. But if you have picked a general point, not this, if x naught had been a defined point, then it's not just rotation, it has to be a combination of rotation and boost. Okay? I picked this point because it's easiest, okay, why it's a pure rotation. Okay? And it's enough to pick this point because I have already established homogeneity. Okay, once you have established homogeneity, then any point is equivalent to any other. Is this clear? Okay, so this is the third example of homogeneous and isotropic space. I'll again construct a metric which is very similar, the parameterization, okay, except there's some cos will be replaced with cos hyperbolic and so on. So this is cos hyperbolic side, A cos hyperbolic side, Z is A sine hyperbolic side, cos theta. metric, three-dimensional metric is A square times B psi square plus sine hyperbolic square sine.
This shows that the signature is.
Yeah, so this for the signature is all plus. Okay, then even though there is a minus dw square to begin with, right, after you substitute and work this out, you find that it's strictly positive signature. Okay, so this is an acceptable three-dimensional space that we can use for describing our universe. Okay. And again, we can make a change of variables r equal to sine hyperbolic psi. Okay. And this will give you ds3 square as a square dr square over 1 plus kr square plus r square. Is this okay? Okay, so this is the third example. So now let me write down the four-dimensional metric, then I'll stop. So back to cosmology. So ds square, the four-dimensional metric, was minus dt square plus this three-dimensional metric is what I have to write now. So let me write it as a square times dr square over 1 minus kr square.
A in principle depend on T, right?
Yeah, that's all right. Let me write this r square. K here is either 0 or plus minus 1. Okay? So now we have to see where we can introduce time dependence. Okay? So you know that for every fixed time the metric has to have this form. Okay? Now what can depend on time, right? This structure is fixed completely. Okay? K is 0 or plus minus 1. So it cannot suddenly jump discontinuously from 0 to 1 or minus 1, right? So K is fixed, okay, in a given universe. So the only place where you can introduce time dependence is in this A. So A is an arbitrary parameter, right? So A can be a continuous function of time. Okay, that doesn't violate any of the principles that you have been saying, because F3 of course is allowed to depend on time. Okay, it's just that the condition for homogeneity and isotropy imposes condition on F3, and that condition is sufficiently strong to fix these relative coefficients completely. Right? There is no free, okay? But you can use time dependence here. So this I can write as A of t whole square. So what we see is that imposing the condition for homogeneity and isotropy, we can parameterize the evolution of the universe into a single function of time. Okay, A of t. Okay, once you know how A changes as a function of time, it tells you uniquely, okay, what the universe is doing. Okay, of course, this is based on the assumption that it's homogeneous and isotropic. Okay? So this can only describe properties of the universe at large scale. Okay? Nevertheless, if you are interested only in large scale properties of the universe, okay, then all you have to do is to find that time dependence of A of t. Okay, so next time we will discuss first of all what the physical significance of A is, how it is measured, okay, how do you know if given that A is time dependent, okay, and then we will discuss how to find out time evolution of A of t from theoretical principles.
So,
Yes.
so there in that case, we cannot introduce one more negative sign and
No, if you try to introduce one more negative sign, okay, then the final metric will not have the equivalent signature.
but it will be still homogeneous.
Yeah, it will be still homogeneous and isotropic because I mean so you still have the full set of SO2 transformation, right? 2 positive and 2 negative. Okay, so you have to have enough number of killing vectors, right, to establish homogeneity and isotropy, okay, but it will not be Euclidean.
And
See, the point is if the metric is not Euclidean, right, then the notion of isotropy has to be changed a little, right? It's not, now you are saying that 2 points at equal distance have to be related by rotation. That will not be rotation anymore, right? It will be some Lorentz transformation now, because the metric on the 3-dimensional space itself will not be Euclidean metric, right? But this result will still hold.
And sir, about this 3D metric, the
Yes.
3D space that is embedded into the full 4-dimensional space and space time.
That's it, yeah. So the 4-dimensional space-time is fictitious. That doesn't exist, right? Because this metric, see that 4th dimension is not the usual time that you are talking about, right? The usual time is here. Okay, that's this one. Okay, this here, this is just a fictitious coordinate system that we have introduced to describe the possible metric. Okay, we could have from the beginning just said that this is the metric. Okay, in fact, I mean, if we had proceeded systematically, if we didn't know what the homogeneous isotropic metric is, okay, but suppose you had just said that we write down a most general metric, allow for a most general metric, and then look for solutions to killing vector equation. Okay, we want to impose condition on the metric and the killing vector so that the killing vector equations are satisfied. Right? And we need sufficient number of killing vectors to have homogeneous and isotropic metric. Right? You will basically arrive at this metric, one of these 3 metrics, up to coordinate transformation. Right? You may not get it in this particular coordinate system, but this is what all you will get. Right? So you can talk about these spaces without ever talking about the embedding space. Right? It's just that thinking of this as a surface in an embedding space makes it easier to visualize, and also symmetries are manifest. Okay, but don't think of the embedding space as being anything physical. Right? It doesn't make sense to have a point x, y, z, w which doesn't satisfy this. Is this okay? Yes.
W square plus x square minus y square minus z square you could take.
Yes.
Then
Yeah, so I think that's what they are saying, w square plus x square minus y square minus z square, right? And you have to also change this metric, because only then the transformation will leave both the metric and this invariant, right? So you can do that certainly, right? That will have a symmetry which is SO2 because it has 2 negative and 2 positive signatures. Okay? But when you do this, when you eliminate and eventually write the final metric,
That will
you will find that it has a negative
mean cost metric.
terms. It will be have a Minkowski signature, and that's the reason why you don't use this metric for our purpose, right? Because you are looking for a Euclidean metric.
so there also R3 will be of Lorentz.
Yes, exactly. So R3, analog of R3 itself will be a Lorentz transformation.
And the whole space time will be minus minus plus plus time.
Well, the whole space time of course has only 3 signatures, but it's a 3-dimensional space, right? And I think what you will get is you will get minus plus plus.
No, the whole space time.
Oh yeah, if you including a t, yeah, then it will be minus minus plus plus, which is of course not what you want, right? See, because you already have the minus dt square here, what you want here is purely Euclidean, right? All plus signatures. Okay? So for that is not possible by changing 2 of these signs to negative. In fact, here also it is not obvious that you could do this, right? It so happens that if you try to start from here and implement this condition, you do get something like this. If, for example, you change this to x square plus y square plus z square minus w square equal to s square, you could do this, right? This also has exactly the same symmetry, same isometry. This will also give a space, but that will not be Euclidean. So it's so while This kind of construction guarantees that you get a homogeneous and isotropic space. To guarantee that it's a Euclidean space is not easy. For sphere, of course, it's easy, but for others, you have to do some work to eventually check that you get an Euclidean space. Any other questions? Okay, so we'll continue next time.